Have you ever been told you didn't belong? That no matter how skilled, how prepared, or how focused you were, the world had already made up its mind about you? Avery Collins knew that feeling intimately. Labeled a distraction, mocked as a liability, and pushed to the margins by those meant to stand beside her, she didn't break. She didn't speak. She simply breathed, aimed, and waited. Because some legacies aren't inherited through medals or praise, they're carved in silence, forged in fire, and passed down one quiet lesson at a time. Her journey wasn't about proving them wrong. It was about honoring someone who believed in her long before the world ever would. And when the moment came, that one impossible second between chaos and survival, Avery didn't hesitate. She pulled the trigger, not for glory, but for every silent warrior who ever stood alone. This is not just a story about a sniper. It's about grit, legacy, and the quiet kind of strength that doesn't ask for permission, only the shot. Master Sergeant Derek Slater's voice cut through the dry air like a blade. You think hitting bullseyes on a range makes you ready for war? His tone was sharp, dismissive, and laced with contempt. He looked directly at her. Here, Collins, you're just a liability with lip gloss. Avery Collins didn't react. She didn't argue or explain herself. Instead, she calmly checked the bolt on her rifle, locked eyes with the horizon, and waited. Silent, steady. Then it came. A single crack echoed across the Nevada mountains. Clean, decisive. The shot dropped 3 enemy combatants before the rest of her unit had even registered what was happening, let alone taken cover. When the dust settled, every man turned toward her, not with ridicule, but in stunned silence. Their taunts, their doubts, all of it crumbled in that moment. Because the woman they said didn't belong, the one they tried to break, had just saved them all. And they didn't know the half of it. The wind at Fort Rivington was merciless. It swept over the rifle range, dry and biting, settling into every crease and seam of a soldier's uniform. This place had no patience for arrogance. Everything here had to be earned. Every inch of ground, every shot taken, every bead of sweat. It stripped you down to who you really were. For Corporal Avery Collins, stepping into the elite sniper qualification program wasn't just another career move. It was personal. And she didn't come to impress anyone. She arrived without fanfare. No stories, no warnings. But buried behind her stillness, behind her careful breath and quiet focus, was a legacy that none of them saw coming. Her grandfather, Master Sergeant Samuel Collins, was a ghost in the jungles of Vietnam. His record, over 200 confirmed kills, with whispers of far more, was legendary among the few who even knew of him. He never spoke of it, not once, but in the cold dawns of Montana, he passed on everything that mattered to his granddaughter. Steady hands, discipline, silence. He didn't train her to boast. He trained her to survive. And now she was here, not to tell his story, but to finish it. Only the top 1% of marksmen from all branches were accepted into the program. Of the 24 chosen, Avery was the only woman. From day one, that fact followed her like a shadow. She could feel it in the glances, hear it in the muttered jokes. Didn't know they issued mascara with M24s, one of the guys sneered as she rolled out her mat that first morning. Careful, princess, another added. Wouldn't want you to chip a nail on the bolt. But those were just background noise. The real test came in the form of Master Sergeant Derek Slater. He didn't bother with jokes. He didn't need to. Slater broke people with surgical precision. With 4 combat deployments and a reputation for turning elite snipers into ghosts or dropping them cold, his word carried weight. And from the first moment he saw her, he made it clear. Her being here wasn't just wrong. It was an insult. I've had to bury soldiers more prepared than you, he said flatly after her second drill. You want my advice? Get out before someone else has to pay for your experiment. Every morning, Slater found new ways to twist the knife, microscopic criticisms, relentless lectures aimed directly at her. Not just critiques, dismantlings, public, deliberate. He called her Collins like it was a warning label or medieval. Avery never responded. She inhaled, she exhaled, she listened. At night, while the others joked and bantered around their fires, she sat alone cleaning her rifle. Click by click, stroke by stroke, steel on steel, breath on breath. Because this wasn't new to her. Maybe not the terrain, not the desert or the ridgelines, but the scrutiny, the resistance, the stare-downs from men who didn't think she belonged. She knew that battlefield by heart. She had walked it since she first picked up a rifle with her grandfather, and she wasn't here to win them over. She was here because she had already proven herself to the only person who mattered. Samuel Collins didn't raise her to be accepted. He raised her to be unshakable. So when Slater spat those words at her, "You think bullseyes make you a warrior?" They echoed in her head, yes, but they didn't define her. She didn't answer. She just adjusted her scope, focused downrange at 800 meters, and exhaled. Because warriors don't need validation. They just need the shot. By the fourth week, the desert sun wasn't the only thing blistering Avery Collins. The heat came from every angle. Cold stares, clipped words, unspoken judgments. The quiet rustle of respect being taken from her piece by piece. And still, she stayed. There was a tightness in her rifle sling that shouldn't have mattered, but it did. A minor tension, the kind he would have overlooked in 5 other candidates before her. But not her. During field lectures, Master Sergeant Slater would pose intricate questions, windage problems, target compensation equations designed to challenge even the most seasoned marksman. Avery would barely begin responding before he'd interrupt her with a derisive scoff. "Not fast enough," he'd say flatly. "In real combat, you're dead before you finish your first sentence." She told herself not to let it get to her. She clung to her grandfather's wisdom, replaying the old man's voice in her mind like a prayer. "They'll come for your mind long before they come for your shot." But this wasn't just about tactics anymore. Slater's drills weren't mere tests. They were targeted, personal. He wasn't training her. He was isolating her. And it was working. The change was slow, but unmistakable. The others began peeling away like dried paint under the relentless sun. At mess hall, conversations would trail off when she walked into a room. Eyes glanced sideways, shoulders shifted, and a cold silence settled over everything. No one said anything overtly cruel, no open hostility, but the message was unmistakable. She wasn't one of them anymore. She was someone to be tolerated, or better yet, ignored. The sting became sharpest during the night drills. She was paired with Corporal Jason Hall, quiet, steady, and until then, seemingly neutral. They moved low across a dry creek bed, crawling under the cover of darkness toward a simulated enemy position. The gravel crunched faintly beneath them. The stars above blinked cold and distant. Then his voice, low and even, broke the stillness. "Don't take this the wrong way," he said, eyes fixed downrange. "But have you ever thought maybe this isn't the place for you?" Avery froze. It wasn't the question itself that stunned her, but the resigned certainty in his voice. He wasn't just wondering. He'd already made up his mind. She didn't answer. She couldn't. Later that night, back in the dim stillness of the barracks, she found a folded piece of paper tucked under her rucksack. No name, no signature, just 4 words, printed in thick, blocky handwriting. "Request transfer before regret." She turned it over. Scrawled on the back in a smaller, uneven script, "Before you get someone killed." She sat on the edge of her bunk, boots still coated in dust from the range. Her fingers moved instinctively to the letter she always kept in her footlocker, her grandfather's letter. The paper had grown soft over time, edges worn and creased from countless nights like this one. "Fire for those who can't," he had written. "But remember, sometimes the one who needs defending the most is the warrior standing alone." She blinked hard. Now she understood. This wasn't about her marksmanship. Not really. Slater didn't need to fail her in any official capacity. All he had to do was make her seem unstable. A liability. He only had to plant enough seeds of doubt, shift enough glances, twist enough perceptions. Just enough. And he was close. Too close. She looked around the barracks, at rows of men who didn't trust her, didn't know her, didn't want her there. And Slater? He didn't build walls around her. He'd done something more effective. He'd made suspicion feel normal, made exclusion feel justified. All through whispers and quiet nods. But what they didn't know, what he could never touch, was the resolve buried deep in her bones. It came from long before this place. It had been shaped through grueling years under Samuel Collins during Frozen Dawn. It didn't require applause. It didn't need belonging, and it sure as hell didn't seek approval. She didn't need to be liked. She needed to be undeniable. And if they weren't going to let her earn her place the way they had, she'd find another way to prove she already had. Avery folded the anonymous note, placed it beside her grandfather's letter in her footlocker, and closed the lid. Then she pulled out her rifle and began cleaning it. Every movement was precise, focused, mechanical. Every component wiped, examined, and returned to place with purpose. She wasn't just maintaining gear. She was preparing for war, the kind they wouldn't see coming. The battle for respect had gone silent. But in Avery's mind, the next shot had already been fired. The Nevada mountains loomed like sentinels, rugged and unrelenting. Jagged ridgelines sliced into the pale sky. The air was bone dry, the wind harsh enough to steal the moisture from your lungs. A perfect battleground for the final exam. And for Corporal Avery Collins, it would become something far more. Week 6 was reserved for the ultimate canvas, a live-fire operation designed to simulate the pressure, and unpredictability of real-world combat. The terrain sprawled over 30 square miles of unforgiving wilderness. The mission: sniper teams were to infiltrate, locate a concealed target, secure critical intelligence, and extract, all while under pressure. No backup, no do-overs, just you, your weapon, your partner, and the mission. But this time there was a twist. Operating under complete autonomy, far removed from instructors or controlled scenarios, the mission was real. The ammo was live. Every decision held weight, and any mistake could cost someone dearly. There were no second chances, no safety nets. If something went wrong, it went wrong for good. Master Sergeant Slater grinned when the teams were posted. "Collins," he snapped, "you're on Alpha Team. With me." "Of course," Avery replied evenly. She didn't flinch. She didn't question. With calm precision, she slung her pack over one shoulder and stood ready. The operation commenced at first light. 5 soldiers moved out, with Slater in front, Corporal Jason Holt right behind, and Avery assigned to communications. That wasn't just a logistical role, it was an intentional insult. "You're our ears, Collins," Slater had sneered. "Let the real shooters handle the real work." For 6 hours, they maneuvered through the rugged terrain, twisting hills, harsh ridgelines, until they pinpointed their target, a small communications relay nestled within a rock formation. Avery never lost focus. Her ears stayed tuned to the radio, her eyes on the landscape. She listened, waited. Then everything changed. Her headset crackled, not the voice of an instructor, but something else, something colder. "Control to all units. Code black. Repeat. Code black. This is not a drill. Perimeter breach. Armed unknowns confirmed inside training zone. Engage only if necessary. Evacuation point updated. Grid Foxtrot 9. Avery didn't even have time to respond. The first shot tore across the ridge like a thunderclap, slamming into the earth just inches from Holt's boot. In an instant, the team hit the dirt, scrambling for cover that barely existed. No camouflage, no shelter, just open hillside and scattered rocks. Slater ducked behind a boulder, yelling into his radio, panic creeping into his voice. "Control! Say again! Who the hell is in our zone?" Another shot cracked out. This one found flesh. Holt cried out, clutching his upper arm, blood pouring fast. Then silence. Heavy, smothering silence. The kind that dares you to even breathe. But Avery didn't freeze. She didn't duck, didn't cower. She moved, low to the ground, rifle raised, breathing slow. While the rest of the team panicked, she was calculating, scanning, thinking, watching. A flicker of movement caught her eye, sunlight glinting off glass. Scope. A small shift in the baby brush about 600 meters up the ridge. A sniper, partially concealed. But not from her. She saw him. She felt him. Exhale. Squeeze. Crack. The sniper dropped like a marionette with its strings cut, limbs folding silently behind the brush. The team went rigid. But Avery wasn't done. Another flicker, two more shadows moving low behind a fallen log, attempting to flank the team from the sides. She pivoted. Crack, crack. Both fell before they even got their second step. 3 hostiles. 3 shots. 10 seconds. Silence returned, but this time it was different. Behind her, Slater stepped out from behind the boulder, stunned, his jaw slack, his rifle forgotten in his hands. He stared at her. So did the others. Even Holt, still clutching his bleeding arm, blinked in disbelief, like he was trying to understand whether what he just saw had really happened. Avery. Slater's voice came out thin, almost breathless. Where did you learn to do that? She stood slowly, calm, controlled, reloaded without hesitation, her hands steady. Her voice was low. My grandfather, she said. Samuel Collins, Vietnam Special Forces. Over 200 confirmed eliminations. Her gaze met Slater's. For the first time, he looked away. He started training me when I was 6, she continued. Taught me how to track, how to breathe, move, wait, how to shoot out without flinching, how to see what others miss, how to know before they even understand what they're looking for. Slater said nothing. He couldn't, because the woman he'd tried to sideline, belittle, and mock for 6 long weeks had just saved every single man in his squad. Avery slung her rifle across her back and glanced toward the horizon. Evac's waiting at Foxtrot 9, she said evenly. Let's move. No one questioned her, no smirks, no snide remarks, just silent agreement. And for the first time since her arrival, Avery walked point. 3 weeks had passed since that ambush in the Nevada mountains. The bruises had faded, but the memory hadn't. There were no headlines, no press briefings, but word had traveled. In military circles, whispers moved quickly. Corporal Avery Collins was no longer just another trainee. She was the sniper who neutralized 3 armed hostiles in 10 seconds flat. The soldier who saved her team, and the woman whose name now carried quiet, undeniable weight. Avery never sought the spotlight. While others in training might have craved recognition, she moved through the corridors of Fort Rivington with quiet purpose. She didn't chase applause, didn't linger for compliments. She kept her head down, her routine sharp, and her grandfather's weathered letter folded with care in the breast pocket of her uniform. Always close, always there. She hadn't enlisted for accolades. She had enlisted for something far deeper. Legacy. But silence doesn't last forever. That morning, the air inside Fort Rivington's main auditorium thrummed with a strange, simmering energy. Every seat was taken, rows upon rows of folding chairs filled with uniformed officers, hardened instructors, fresh recruits, and even a scattering of sharply dressed civilians from the Pentagon who had shown up unannounced. The room wasn't loud, but it wasn't calm either. There was an electric kind of stillness, a hush that came not from quiet, but from expectation. At the center of the stage stood Colonel Teresa Maddox, commanding officer of the Sniper Certification Division. She had a reputation like armor, unflinching, merciless, and earned. Maddox wasn't one for sentiment. She had 3 calling cards: discipline like steel, standards no one dared relax under, and a refusal to award medals unless they were undeniably earned. Backstage, Avery waited. Her breathing stayed measured, steady, but her palms betrayed her, clammy against the sharp seams of her pressed uniform. Then Colonel Maddox spoke. Her voice filled the space with ease and authority. We often say excellence needs no introduction, she began, her cadence calm but commanding, but sometimes it deserves recognition. The murmuring stopped, back straightened, boots stilled. 3 weeks ago, Maddox continued, a standard training exercise became something else. An unidentified hostile force breached our perimeter. 1 unit was cut off, cornered, and exposed. She let the tension settle into the room. In that moment, she said slowly, one soldier didn't wait for orders. She stepped forward, not because she had to, because she was ready. Because every day, every rep, every round had prepared her for it. Then Maddox turned toward the edge of the stage and gave the slightest nod. Corporal Avery Collins, she called out. Front and center? There was no applause, no trumpet, no fanfare. just the echo of Avery's boots on hardwood as she crossed the floor. The moment didn't feel like victory. It felt like judgment, a reckoning. At the podium, Colonel Maddox opened a small velvet box. Inside shimmered the Distinguished Service Medal, an honor rarely, almost never, granted to anyone below the rank of captain. She didn't just save her team, Maddox said as she pinned the medal above Avery's heart. She shattered every assumption made about her. Then Maddox paused. Her tone shifted, softened in weight, but sharpened in intent. What most don't know, she said, is that Corporal Collins comes from one of the most elite sniper lineages in American military history. There was a ripple through the auditorium, soft, surprised murmurs. Her grandfather, Master Sergeant Samuel Collins, served 3 tours in Vietnam, 217 confirmed kills, recipient of the Medal of Honor, the Silver Star, a strategic genius so exacting that his techniques are still studied quietly by our most advanced military programs. The oxygen in the room seemed to thin. Avery remained still. She didn't nod, didn't blink, because now they all knew. The bloodline, the legacy, it was out. Maddox stepped back. Corporal Collins has prepared a few words. Avery moved to the microphone. Her stance was firm, deliberate. Her eyes swept the room, not searching for rank, but for faces. The same faces that had dismissed her not long ago. She didn't need to remind them. They remembered. I was told I didn't belong here, she began, her voice clear and unshaking. Told I wasn't tough enough, sharp enough, cold enough. She let the words hang for a beat. Told I was a distraction, a liability, a mistake. Silence fell again, but this time it leaned forward. But bullets don't care who pulls the trigger, Avery said. The mission doesn't care about your gender, and death doesn't stop to check your resume before it comes calling. In the front row, a figure straightened their spine, then another. You don't have to look like them, she said, eyes scanning the crowd. You just have to be ready when no one else is. And in that moment, among those who once doubted her, every single one listened. That evening, a clip of her speech spread across military forums like wildfire. By morning, it had gone viral. Millions watched a young soldier in a spotless U uniform quietly challenge decades of expectation and change the conversation. 6 months later, the Atlantic wind howled against her back as Corporal Avery Collins stood at the edge of a rocky cliff in northern Spain. This wasn't Fort Rivington anymore. Below her, 12 elite soldiers lined a narrow mountain pass in staggered formation, adjusting optics, checking wind drift, recalibrating their scopes with measured precision. This was no ceremony, no speech, no audience. This was the next mission. Training was rigorous. This wasn't just another elite unit. It was Ghost Squadron, a covert multinational task force formed under the radar by U.S. Special Operations Command, in close cooperation with select allied nations. Their mission, to act in the shadows where politics failed, to neutralize threats before the world ever heard of them, and to protect innocent lives with precision and absolute silence. At the helm of this team stood Avery Collins. Technically, she still held the rank of corporal, but in Ghost Squadron, rank was irrelevant. Leadership wasn't assigned. It was earned, and Avery had earned every ounce of it. The team was a collection of the world's most skilled warriors, carefully chosen not for appearance or balance, but for unmatched capability. Among them, 3 former Delta Force operatives, 2 ex-MI6 agents, a Canadian Arctic Ranger, a French commando sniper, a South Korean infiltration expert known for vanishing into terrain, and an Afghan sharpshooter who once defended her entire village alone for 8 harrowing days before help arrived. They came from different nations, branches, backgrounds, even different alphabets, but they all spoke the same language: discipline. And every single one of them followed Avery, not because she barked the loudest or commanded with ego, but because they'd seen the proof, the raw footage, the debriefs, the after-action reports. Whispers of Nevada floated through the ranks, of an ambush where Avery moved before anyone else even registered the threat, 3 hostiles down before her team knew they were under fire. She never mentioned it. She didn't have to. Training under her wasn't what they'd imagined. No screaming, no speeches, no theatrics, just relentless repetition. Fundamentals so finely tuned they became second nature. Avery didn't teach them how to shoot. She taught them how to feel the shot, how to align with the terrain, how to read emotion and intent, how to recognize hesitation in a heartbeat. She taught them how to breathe with the earth, how to vanish without a trace, how to decide when not to pull the trigger, because sometimes the real enemy was fear itself. Each night she passed around pages from her grandfather's old Vietnam field diary, transcribed by hand, each page bearing notes and worn annotations. They read how Samuel Collins navigated thick jungle without satellites, how he deduced a man's dominant hand by the angle of a footprint, how he sensed the presence of something bigger, a threat unseen just by the stillness of birds. During drills, Avery moved silently along the firing line, pausing briefly behind each operator. No shouting, no grandstanding, just a soft, again, or watch your drift, or sometimes just a nod. It was enough. When she spoke, they listened, not because she demanded obedience, but because she offered respect first, always. She never asked for permission to lead. She simply did. One evening during a mission briefing in an undisclosed Eastern European facility, her second-in-command, an older Scottish veteran named Callum Ree, leaned over as they studied satellite imagery together. His voice low, almost amused, he asked, "You ever get tired of proving yourself, boss?" Avery didn't look up. "I'm not proving anything anymore," she said. "I just train them so they never have to." He gave a slight nod and left her to the maps. In the months that followed, Ghost Squadron operated in 6 different countries. They dismantled a human trafficking network in the Balkans. They intercepted a rogue missile shipment bound for chaos off the Horn of Africa. They extracted a kidnapped journalist from deep within the jungle without a single shot fired. No unit patches, no headlines, no medals, just clean results. Inside her gear locker, Avery taped a black and white photo, her grandfather, Samuel Collins, in jungle fatigues, rifle in hand, a weary half-smile on his face. Beside it, a note in her careful script: "You don't need noise to leave an echo." Every time the team stood at a new ridgeline, dressed in the dusk, waiting for the storm, no one saw them, no one knew, but the world slept safer, because Ghost Squadron was there, and Avery Collins was leading them. Then, just after midnight, her tablet chimed. Mary was alone in her quarters at a NATO forward base near Sievo, the desert wind hissing softly through the canvas seams. She was reviewing post-op reports, the glow of the screen casting quiet shadows across her face. The encrypted ping came like a whisper. Sender: Department of Army Archives, Family Records Division. Subject: Request for secure contact. Re Samuel Collins. Declassified. Her pulse caught mid-beat. For years, her grandfather's military file had been a sealed vault, classified and off-limits. Until now. She had tried so many times before. Each time she dug deeper, hoping to get beyond the surface-level details, she was met with the same response: polite, firm, and final. Records unavailable. Restricted clearance. It was like chasing the shadow of a ghost. But something felt different this time. Avery Collins activated the encrypted comms line. The screen remained black for a moment, and then with a blink, it came alive. A woman appeared, early 60s, sharp, calculating eyes, dressed in a perfectly pressed uniform. There was an unmistakable calmness about her, the kind that comes from decades of knowing far more than she could ever admit. "This is Colonel Diane Mercer, Intelligence Oversight Division," she introduced, her voice steady, unhurried. "Thank you for responding, Corporal Collins." Avery straightened in her seat. "Yes, ma'am. You said this was about my grandfather?" Colonel Mercer gave a solemn nod. "Until last week, your grandfather's files were sealed under the codename Black Signal. But with the recent declassification of Vietnam-era operations, combined with your own exemplary field record, authorization has been granted for a restricted file, one that's for your eyes only." She leaned closer to the screen. "Samuel Collins wasn't just a decorated sniper, Avery. He was part of a covert strike unit known as Silent Thunder. It was a deep black initiative, a ghost program. Their missions were unacknowledged, executed in Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, even in countries we're still not permitted to name." Avery didn't speak. Her fingers curled around the edge of her desk. She could feel the pressure in her chest tighten. His official record lists 217 confirmed kills, Mercer continued. The actual number, over 400. He was one of only 3 snipers in U.S. military history to ever reach that number. Avery let out a long, slow breath. Her mind spiraled with the weight of it. But within that storm came clarity. Things she'd never understood now fit perfectly. The way her grandfather moved, the silence he wore like armor, the way he would vanish into stillness even in the quiet winters of Montana. "There's more," Mercer said. "Before his death, your grandfather submitted a classified proposal to revive Silent Thunder. He outlined a new doctrine, new command structure, and he recommended one name." Mercer tapped something off screen. A file flashed into view. It was Avery's. Avery's breath hitched. "You're not being recruited," Mercer clarified. "You're being offered the chance to inherit the command structure of a next-gen Silent Thunder initiative. This wouldn't just be a unit, it would be a fully operational global directive. Deep cover, unofficial missions, complete strategic autonomy." Mercer paused, her voice steady but unmistakably personal. "Ghost Squadron already operates like Silent Thunder once did, but this would go further. You wouldn't just lead, you'd define the mission, choose your people, shape its legacy." The air in the room felt heavier. Avery could almost hear her pulse. "Why me?" she asked, barely above a whisper. Mercer didn't miss a beat. "Because you've proven in record time what others spend careers chasing. You lead without ego. You train without arrogance. You execute without compromise. And frankly, no one else has ever mirrored your grandfather's tactical instincts so precisely." Avery stood, needing movement. She crossed to the window and stared out into the dark, windswept base. In the distance, a small red light blinked atop a communications tower, a lone signal pulsing in the night. She could almost feel Samuel behind her again, his presence as clear as memory. She saw herself at 7, small hands struggling to steady a rifle, his hands guiding hers, his voice calm and exacting, teaching her to trust the scope, trust her breath, trust herself. She turned back to the screen. "I'll do it," she said firmly, "but under 3 conditions." Mercer's brow lifted in curiosity. "First, I keep my current team. I'm not abandoning them." Mercer gave a crisp nod. "Approved." "Second, any operation involving civilians must have my direct consent. No hidden agendas, no political games." "Understood." "And third, we build a training pipeline. We prepare the next generation. Men, women, all of them. We build more than a team. We build a legacy." For the first time, Mercer's steely expression softened. Her voice, when she replied, was lower, almost reverent. "Those were Samuel's terms too," she said, "back in 1975. Avery nodded once, and then without fanfare the screen blinked to black. Silent Thunder had returned, not as a faded legend, not as a ghost whispered about in old files, but as a living mission. One with Avery Collins at the helm. She didn't do it for medals. Never had. Not for applause or recognition or to prove anyone wrong. For Avery, this wasn't about the past. It was about making sure no one else would ever have to walk the path she had, alone, doubted, carrying a legacy like a burden. When she took command, she did it her way. And her first condition, she kept her word. Every member of Ghost Squadron stood by her side. They weren't just a team. They were family, forged in fire, shaped by endless drills, and bound by a silence deeper than words. Together they had crossed borders under moonlight, their movements choreographed in trust and shadows. They had bled on foreign soil and survived impossible odds, and now, under her leadership, they would carry a new purpose. Avery Collins had conditions, non-negotiable ones. First, no operation would ever risk innocent lives. Silent Thunder would be sharp and surgical, never reckless or heavy-handed. Second, and most personal to her, they would pass on what they knew, not buried in black ops reports or hidden in the margins of some forgotten dossier, but out in the open, person to person. Every man, every woman, regardless of their story, their language, their origin. If they carried the fire within, she would offer them the forge to shape it. And so Silent Thunder was reborn. No longer merely an elite strike unit, it became something far more enduring, a crucible of legacy. Their base didn't appear on maps. Hidden deep within a jagged spine of snow-capped mountains nestled between nations, it was a sanctuary and a proving ground. Part fortress, part training compound, part resting place for truths too dangerous for the world to know. No flags adorned its walls. There were no commemorative plaques or photos boasting past glories. Just one steel door that every recruit passed through, etched with a simple command: be your own guardian. It was the final line from Samuel Collins's field journal, the man who'd raised Avery, trained her, and shaped her code. That line became her doctrine. Years rolled by, governments shifted, headlines burned hot, then disappeared. But while the world slept, the shadows moved, silent guardians no one ever saw. Terrorist plots disintegrated before launch. Hidden chemical caches simply ceased to exist. A kidnapped child in Istanbul was back in her bed before sunrise. No one heard the shot. No one spotted the silhouette moving across rooftops or ridgelines. But in briefings held behind sealed doors in the highest levels of Allied command, three initials began to appear in the margins of reports: STS. Among those in the know, something new emerged. Not the kind of respect that came with medals or years in uniform, but the kind that was whispered between veterans in late-night bars, across quiet rooftops, in war zones and safe houses. They said she could identify a target before a drone locked in, that her team moved like mist, that she never missed. Some called her the ghost of the trigger, but Avery never chased a myth. She didn't care for legends. What mattered to her were the moments at night in the mountains, when raw recruits sat around the fire after their first day, their muscles aching, their minds spinning. That's when she would hand over the most sacred thing she owned, her grandfather's battered field journal. Its pages were frayed and stained with old ink, dried sweat, and fine desert sand. Next to it, she placed her own additions, new lessons born of modern battlefields and silent corridors. She would look them in the eyes and say, not loudly, but with unwavering conviction, "We don't pull the trigger to prove we're right. We pull it when we're the only ones left who can stop what's coming." One snow-laced morning, deep in the compound's underground heart, Avery stood alone. She watched through reinforced glass as a fresh class of snipers trained on targets so far they couldn't be seen without faith. She wore no medals, no military stars, just a subtle insignia she had designed. A hawk mid-flight, carved with care, worn with pride. A ping sounded on her secure tablet. The message was brief: high-value target, deep in a lawless zone at Activaon, a mission too politically sensitive for any official agency to touch without provoking global consequences. Avery didn't hesitate. 2 taps on the screen, her team would be assembled and airborne by nightfall. She turned to leave, but not before brushing her hand against the photo mounted on the wall, one she had hung herself. In it, a much younger Avery sat on Samuel Collins's lap, both of them coated in dust, hearing protection on, and her tiny fingers wrapped around the stock of a wooden training rifle. Below the photo, a handwritten line read, "Legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's who's ready to carry it forward." And Avery Collins had ensured one thing above all: there would always be someone ready. In a world that spins faster every day, where attention is fleeting and true character is often drowned out by noise, her story reminds us of something timeless, something American, something deeply human. That character still matters. Not loud voices, not flashy titles, but the quiet power of someone who shows up when it counts, who picks discipline over pride, duty over attention, and who pays forward the sacrifices of those who came before by preparing those who come next. Avery never asked to lead. She didn't seek power, glory, or a spotlight, but when the time came to act, she did. And that made all the difference. He earned it, inch by inch, breath by breath, each choice carved from unwavering resolve. Every step he took was quiet, deliberate, and meant to protect rather than glorify. And in that quiet courage lies a lesson for all of us, one that doesn't require a uniform to understand or embody. Whether you're serving in a hospital, showing up for your family, or standing strong for your community, ask yourself, when the noise dies down and the pressure rises, are you the one people trust to stay calm and do what's right? Are you the steady presence in the chaos? Not because there's recognition waiting, not because anyone's watching, but simply because it's the right thing to do. And maybe the more profound question is this: what kind of legacy are you shaping in the stillness, when the spotlight is elsewhere and no applause follows your footsteps? Because some missions aren't broadcast on television, and some victories never make headlines. Not all heroes are celebrated with medals. Some walk among us quietly, making the world better without ever asking for credit, just by choosing integrity over attention, selflessness over show. Now, we'd love to hear from you. Have you ever crossed paths with someone like Avery? Someone whose quiet strength reshaped the lives around them, who stood their ground with humility and changed the course of things without needing a stage? If so, share their story in the comments. Your voice might be the one that helps someone feel less invisible, more understood. And if this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of someone who truly earned your respect, please don't leave without clicking like, subscribing to our channel, and becoming part of our community. Together, we can keep these quiet, powerful legacies alive. Because whether the hero is a nurse, a soldier, a teacher, a parent, or simply a kind soul who showed up when it mattered most, these are the stories that shape the soul of America. Not with grand speeches, but with quiet acts of courage that ripple through generations. Thank you for being here. We'll see you in the next story. And remember this: to make history, you don't need to raise your voice. You just need to rise when it counts.